Welcome to our Amud Yomi Shiur, Bava Metzia, and we are in Daf Samech Amud Aleph, a few lines before the Mishnah. Welcome to everybody over here in the Avos Shalom Torah Center in Bet Shemesh, YouTube, and above all, Torah Anytime viewers and listeners. We have learned yesterday, and we're going to quickly recap today. There were three cases. There are three cases. There are three halachas that Rava came to paskin against. In other words, there are three halachas that Rava is coming to tell us. Three forms of behavior that people used to follow. And Rava says the wrong because of ribis. Two of them we mentioned yesterday, Talshoi Papunoi. We also mentioned the one of Mechoiza. Mechoiza people expected gains, profits from an investment and insisted that the profit should be given whether or not the profit really took place, and that ends up to be ribis. Now we're up to the third one. We're going to learn today the third one and then go to the Mishnah. By the way, today's Mishnah is the Mishnah that is the basis for Hetter Iska. The only reason why everybody here can, deal with banks, mortgages, rental and stuff like that is only because of Hetter Iska. The basis for Hetter Iska will be taught today in Metzia Hashem. Not the whole thing, just the root of it. The base of it will be in today's Mishnah in Metzia Hashem. But first of all, let's finish off with Chachire Noshoi. That's a third case, excuse me. Sorry, Chachire Noshoi. What are the Chachire Noshoi? Why is it so bad, so wrong to act that way? Says the Gemara, Chachire means what? A Chachir, as opposed to an Oris, a Chachir, you can call it in English whichever way you want, is I'm a landlord, I'm a landowner, and I have my field to take care of, to tend to till the earth. And now, what do I do? But we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's about 7 lines from before the Mishnah. From the Mishnah count, 7. The first word is V'nach nafshe. He died, Amemar. That was yesterday. So basically, if I have a piece of land, vineyard, whatever, I want to invest in it, I want to cultivate it. And then what do I say? You should be my oris, but you don't take percentage. Regardless to the amount of furim, of tons of kilos that the field produces, the yields, you every year, you have to give me, let's say, 10 kur. Every year you have to give me, not percentage, but numbers. Every year you have to give me, let's say, I expect to get from you 10 kurim per year. Kur is a big amount, let's say. What happens if there are only 5 or 6 kurim? You still have to give me the amount in money, whatever. Even if it makes less than 10, you still have to give me 10. That's not like the mechuzah people that are being, the twisting the arm. That's the agreement. And it has nothing to do with the loan. I'm not lending you anything, right? I'm the owner of the land. I have everything in the land. I have every right to do whatever I want. You're the worker, and that's my condition. My condition is I want to see a profit from that land, regardless to what? To whether or not there were profits or no profits, whether it makes 100 or 8, you always have to give me 10 tons, whatever, 10 kol a year. That is just a translation of the word chocher. Lachor in modern Hebrew means to lease. Chachira is a lease, But that's what it means in halacha. That's a choicher as opposed to an oris. Okay, it's mentioned in Shabbos also. Now, chachira narshoi. What do those narshoi? Naresh was a city in Bavel, and in the city of Naresh, they used to have a specific chachira with the following agreement, with the following details. The katvi hachi. That's what they would have written. Mishken le plania, R.A. le plania. Reuven was memashken his land to Shimon, which means, let's say Shimon lent money to Reuven. Reuven now gave the land to who? To Shimon as a mashkanta. Malve and Loive. Let's not even talk Reuven and Shimon. Malve gave money to Loive as a loan. Mr. Loive has a piece of land, and that piece of land is memushkan, is mortgaged to who? Is mortgaged to the Malve. What kind of mortgage? Anyone that's in your chart, except for that he cannot. In other words, it's any of the cases in which he can and may evict him from the place, which means that the land is not owned by the lender. It is given to the lender for what? Anybody? It's given to the lender. He has the right that if he works the land and he picks the dates or the grapes or the rent or the whatever or the gold and puts it in the gold in the basket in agba, puts it in his kedim, then there is. That's how we were magdir yesterday, right? The idea of mashkanta. Mashkanta, the land still belongs to the loive. Elamai, the malve has rights that if he comes and he takes care of business and he starts collecting, he's going to get the tmarim. There'll be his tmarim. That is potential rights, you can call it. Okay, that's what he has, right? And we said once he gives them the money, freeze right there. Don't pick not even one date anymore, even the ones on the ground. You have the right to collect them, then they'll be yours. Yeah, it's not a lottery ticket, it's much more. You're getting something real, but the land is not yours. Okay, so far so good. Now, what happens when, excuse me, I'm sorry. Now, he wrote it as follows. The kasvi hochi, I'm repeating, line starts with the word hochi. We are in Sameches Amud Aleph. Welcome back to the Shiur. We missed you. Hachi, Sameches Amud Aleph. The line starts with the word Hachi. It's a few lines before the Mishnah at the bottom of the page. Mishken leplania are leplania. Mr. Love was memashken, mortgaged his land to the Malve. The Hadar Chachramine. Says the Malve, it's getting tricky. Says the Malve, you know what? I'm a businessman, I'm a lawyer, I'm the lender, I don't know, I'm a doctor in Hadassah. I'm not going to start tending to the land. You know what? The land is yours anyways. You know how to deal with it. You know how to cultivate it. Stay there, mister. Although it is not mine, but all the profits are potentially mine. You be my chachir. You work, and every year I want to get, how much? I want to get 10 tons, let's say, per year. Now, what happens if the field doesn't produce 10 tons? What's going to be then? Still has to make up the money from where exactly? From his own pocket. Yeah. So, no, of course not. So, lat. Machlokes Rishonim whether this is real ribis, like Rashi, Paskin Shulchan Aruch. Other Rishonim say mechzeki ribis. Let's just understand what's going on over here. Who gave money to who? Malve to Loive. Malve gave Loive $1 million, right? Let's start with the easier part. All the Yachneyenta people, what did they see? Anybody who looks around, anybody who watches it like a fly on the wall, what does he see? He sees that, and people know what's going on in the business world. He sees that a rich, fancy guy who has no idea about cultivating earth whatsoever, he gave $1 million to Mr. Loive, who's the owner of the field. Now that field stays under the ownership of who? Of the Loive. It's not the Malve's field. And as the Gemara, let me add one more line for the Gemara. When exactly did Mr. Malve buy the land that he gives it back to him as a person who's employing a chachir? You are not really the owner of the land at all, Mr. Malve. The owner is Mr. Love, right? Okay. So you basically continue, and you, or either it's true or looks like, he owes you money. He owes you $1 million, which he will give you the $1 million. He'll give you the $1 million. And the violent, on top of that, yeah, he also gives you every year 10 tons. I'm going to say, what do you mean? The 10 tons is because it's part of the agreement that he owes him. And that's so simple. Because sometimes he gives you 10 tons, even though he only made 8 tons. And he still gives you from his own pocket. And even if it never morphed to be that way, Lamaisa, that's the agreement. You have to, by hook or by crook, to always provide me with 10 tons, whether it's coming from the land or coming from your own pocket, right? So I have secure gains from a land that really belongs to you, the Love, right? And that is considered either as mechzik ribis, or according to Rashi as real ribis. Unbelievable. Again, let me explain. You guys may ask the question, if you want to ask the intelligent question here, which is really shver on Rashi, that is, we could separate the two businesses, right? Okay, it's two separate stories. That's a question that hovers over the entire sugya, and it's really difficult for me to, I have to admit. You could say, well, what's the connection? One thing is what? He lent him money, is going to give him the $1 million. Chutz mizah, there's a parallel story here in the tale, the parallel Inyan, and that is that what? I made him my chochir, right? So that's two separate things. The chochir, it's not being rude or taking extra. The chochir always has to provide him with 10. Very nice. If you go to the Rishonim, I think it's the Rashba, I didn't say it this morning, I saw it 2 days ago. If you say, look, the Rashba, yeah, he says, it's mechzik ribis. Of course it's mechzik. It at least looks like ribis. Why? Because Shimon, as we're going to see later in the Gemara, the Loive is in the land, was in the land, and will be in the land. He stays in his land. There's a big sign saying Shimon's field. Shimon is the Lova now. Shimon's field. Shimon stays there throughout. Shimon borrowed million, and Shimon from his own pocket gives money to Reuven. So even though you may in your mind be very smart and separate one from the other, but it definitely looks very much like Ribis, right? He got million, yeah, he'll give him the full million, Makesher. Besides that, the Chachirus, the Lova gives more money, sometimes from his own pocket to the Malve. To say that at least looks like Ribis, of course it is, obviously. According to Rashi and Shulchan Aruch Paskin, it's even real Ribis. Rashi says you're not the real owner, because really the owner is the Loive. You have the rights if you work the field. Rashi says the guy, the Malve, Reuven, never worked the field. He never saw the field and never entered the field. He didn't actualize his rights. Listen to me now. He doesn't actualize his rights that if he picks the dates, it will be his. He keilu, before the potential was actualized, he already put who? Shimon, the Loive, who was always there to keep working. So Lamai said it's still Shimon from his own field, who? Shimon's, giving you what? Giving you fruit. And giving you fruit even from his own pocket, even worse. So that alone, according to Rashi, you can ask why, Beseder. But Rashi views that as Ribis Ktsutza, Mamash Ribis. Because you will have a sure gain. It's not an Avak Ribis because maybe yes, maybe no. It's not even Ribis Betzad Echod. You know for sure you have secure gain all the time from the pocket of Levi. Mapitom, of Shimon, sorry. Mapitom, the fruit belonged to me. No, the fruit don't belong to you. The fruit potentially belonged to the Malve. He never maximized that potential. He never actually used it. That, bear with me till the end of the Gemara and then I hear questions. If you understood what I told you, the next piece will now make a lot of sense to you. Idna, what's the solution now to that? Nowadays, they've improved, they kosherized that narshoy business, that chachir narshoy, the kakas vihachi. Nowadays, they have a new kosher version for the same idea. Kanina minei, the Malve, bought it from him, the field, the shahina kama idni, the hadar chochro, which means they write as follows, and they really do that. The Malve actually goes to the field and stays there kama idonim, a few years, like they say, idan v'idonim. He stayed there a few years. Rashi says 3 years. I don't think it's to do chazaka, but we know 3 years is an important period of time when it comes to land. If the Malve actually left his office in Tel Aviv, went to the field, went there, either him or his workers, the owner, the Love, out, I am now really maximizing my potential of using the field, and for a few years, there was like cooling off period in which I, the Malve, actually sat there, tilled the earth, cultivated, did the business, and then I gave you chachirus. After that, that is better. Why? Well, if it's Marisign, it's not Marisign anymore. Why? Because people see, hey, wait a second, look, they changed the sign. It doesn't say LeviGrapevine.com, ReuvenGrapevine.com. He's a new guy. He's fat and chubby and has a red beard. He's a whole new guy. Just moved here. Look, he's the Malve. He's the owner of the field. He's now the owner of the field, is making profit and working. If 3 years later, that cooling off period, then he gave chachirus to who? To the Love, even though the milva is still there, it doesn't look like ribis anymore, because we see like a cutoff, we see like a way of dichotomy between the halva and him being there, and then there was chachirus, and he starts giving him the money, and then people understand that the money given afterwards from the new chocher, who is the Love, that they understand is part of a different agreement. That's a new Indian. And why do we allow to do that, even though we'll see soon that it's also questionable? Then Shapir Dami. What's Lutinol Delis B'fnei Loivin? We mentioned many times that Chazal wanted, sometimes that's mamish the capitalist system. If the rich people are happy, then the poor people are happy. It's not always true, but sometimes it's true. In other words, if the rich man feels that he's not exploited, the rich man knows that if he lends money, he's gonna have not ribis, he's gonna have his rights, he's gonna benefit and be comfortable and convenient with that. With what? With a loan. For example, then also he'll be happier to lend money to the Lovim. Literally, we don't want the door to be locked in front of Lovim. If the Gmachim don't work right, the Malvim, then they'll lock the door, close the Gmach. And who's going to lose? The Anim. right? Lo leinu, the poor people. And therefore, because we want the malve, we want to let the malve maneuver and let him be able, yes, be machir the land to the love who happens to be the real owner all along. We want to enable that. For that, we said, if you have a cooling off period of, let's say, 3 years, then it's okay. Concludes the Gemara, the love meal say, no, it doesn't help. After all said and done, no, even that's not kosher enough for us. According to Rashi, Rashi says it's just a game. Rashi is very good now. Rashi says it's really ribis ktsutza. Rashi sticks to his guns. He says it doesn't only look like ribis, it is ribis. Rashi says he's not the real owner, the malve. The fact he was there for 3 years, it looks nice, smells nice, but it's not true. Because even if you tilled the earth and worked with the real agriculture and he took a whole course in how to be a good farmer, Lamaisa, the actual soil, the earth is not his. Even the fruit are not his. What's his? The potential, if he picks them and takes them, they will be his. That's what a malve has in the mashkanta, right? Or in modern day terms, once the money of the renters are in your account, shkoyach, keep it in your account. Yeah, that's all. But Lamaisa, since he's not the owner, and throughout the real only owner is the love. Once the love starts working there and gives you the fruit and gives you a fruit with achrayas and you have sure gain, you'll always get from him the same amount. There are no risks involved. If there would be risks involved, then would say it's avakribis, because maybe yield, maybe not. But if you know that there's a set amount that will always come from that field, bahukah crook will always come, says Rashi, that's ribis ktsutza. Wow. And Rashi ignores the fact that it's part of chachirus. Because it says at the end of the day, you have a person who borrowed from you, and that person gives you extra money all the time from a field that is not yours, honey. It is potentially yours. It's only potential, the fruit, it's not really your land, and he's giving you a set amount every year. Says Rashi, ribis ktsutza, says Shulchan Aruch, ribis ktsutza. Next time you get the mortgage, want to start tilling in the earth, think again. I mean, you can do it yourself, but don't get the other guy, the loive, who's the real owner, to do this for you. That can involve big problems, either real ribis according to Rashi or mechzika ribis according to, I think it's the Rashba, which I saw inside 2 days ago. I've seen many Rishonim, remember who says what, and we're up to the next Mishnah after a short question session. Before we go into the next Mishnah, let's make a quick summary. It's the end of the week here, and it's the end of the sugya of mashkanta. So basically, mashkanta is as follows. Halacha, Chazal always want to be good for everybody, pragmatic, and obviously everything should be within the limits of halacha. So when a malve, a lender, lent money, and now he's sitting in someone's land, which was given to him as a mortgage, there are a few ways, we counted 6 ways, in which the person, meaning the malve, may make profit from the land, from a mortgage land, and it's still not considered ribis. Now, what you guys all ask is obviously more than obvious. If he doesn't want to, meaning, if he doesn't want to make any profit at all, let's say the person, the malve, will deduct everything from the chov, which means he lent the love $1 million, and now what did he give him? The love gave him a nice office building in Tel Aviv. Every month, 100,000 shekels he rakes, right? He made already, there were 3 months, let's say 300,000 shekels already raked in, the malve. If he deducts it from the million, and he only owes him 700,000, goes without saying that that's kosher. It's not in our sugya because that's kita aleph. We're not in kita aleph, right? Good. Even I, not so good in math, even I can figure it out. Now, the question is, we had different ways in which a person may keep the profits, and still it's not considered ribis without deduction. And it's still not considered as ribis. There were a few ways how you work around that. There are 2 ways which are l'chula alma kosher, even for Talmidei Chachamim Matzumim. I'm not joking. Even a person Talmidei Chacham, the Gemara says, has to conduct himself better. Even that. The 2 best ways, are what? Either before mashkanta desura, either if it's a kind of mashkanta in which the person, the malve, cannot be evicted. Thank you for the word. Cannot be evicted from the land, even if he receives the money. Which means we've decided that this mashkanta that piece of land will be under me, the malve, and I'll get the profits for the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever is accepted, even if they didn't verbally say it, but that's the accepted minhag of the place, which means even if you come to me knocking on the door with $1 million in hand and say, take the $1 million, allow me back into my land, I say, No, the agreement is what? The agreement is I'm here for the next X amount of years. That means that whatever profit I make, I am the temporary but complete, I repeat what I say, I'm the temporary yet complete owner over the field for the 5 years. And therefore, all the revochim I'm making, all the gains I'm making are from my field. It's considered halachically is mine for a time. Yes, there are conditions, there are limitations, but it's my field with conditions, right? Okay, good. So now, therefore, it's my field. From my field, I can make billions. What are you, a communist? That's the best way. The other best way is in a case, even in a case where the person, the Malbeh, may be evicted from the land. When the law comes with the money, which means, as we just said now, the land does not belong to him. All he has is the rights to rake in the gains, but the land is not his. So how can he make the gains? How can he get the $1 million in the 2 or 3 years' time plus all the gains? Isn't that ribis? Oh, for that, we had all kinds of creative ideas. The best idea is mashkanta de surah. What's mashkanta de surah? Mashkanta de surah says as follows, that if I'm going to rake in the money, I'm going to take the land from you, I'm the malveh, mortgaged by me, and we decided a set amount of money that I'm deducting from in one go, as opposed to Nechyosa, which was month by month or year by year. In one go, I decided now that regardless of how much money I'll be making, maybe I'll be making, I don't know, millions, but I now decided this field is for me worth 1 million. In 2 or 3 years' time, however much we decided, it will go back to you and you don't have to pay me back, which means we already decided everything. It's really one huge deduction. So that's deduction. No, it's not deduction like the simple deduction of Kita Aleph, because really, I don't know, maybe I'll make more, maybe I'll make less. There is a gamble here, right? In other words, I may be raking in, I don't know, a lot of money. I may be raking 10 million and still treat it as if what? As I only got from you 1 million. We set the value of that field for the value of the loan, and I say to you that by the end of the loan time, the land goes back to you and you don't have to give me any money at all. That means that it's much more similar to a Kinyan, because I gave you money, I got the field, and then I'll give it back to the field. It's kilo I rented it for that amount of time for the $1 million. And that is considered more like mechira and not like halva. That's the best way. Second best way was nechyosa, and that is for every year, although I can make much more money than the million, all of a sudden, all the fancy buildings in Tel Aviv, all the fancy offices, they all come to my building. Bonanza. Instead of making, I don't know, $500,000 a month, then what? Why is that ribis? Because every month I'm giving you a set amount of money deducted from the chov. But it goes year by year or month by month. That is good because although I may be making much more money, right? Why? Because I gave you 1 million, maybe now I have 10 million in my pocket. But because I give you every year or every month a set amount deducting from your chov, it doesn't look so much like halva. It looks more like I'm buying it in installments. It's kilo every time I give you a bit and bit. It looks more like mechira. It doesn't look like halva. The name of the game is we're gently moving between halva and mechira. Halva is bad and mechira is good. That's always the name of the game. On that we said that's good for everybody, not for Talmid Chachamim. Talmid Chacham has to have a higher standard, so Talmid Chacham should do mashkanta de surah. We also had other 2 options which I'm not mentioning now because simply it's 5 to 10. You see it in the chart, you see it in previous shiurim, but that's basically the idea. These are the solutions. Okay. Preferably no questions because it's already past the sikum. The Tur says, regarding what you said yesterday, before we start the new Mishnah, one more point, even in the place where the malveh may be evicted upon receiving the money from the love, there's still a minimum of 1 year in which the malveh has the right to stay in the field. He can only evict a malveh from his mortgaged land, which he started cultivating and bringing and developing. He can only do that after a minimum of 1 year in which the land is in his hands. Only then the love can come with the money. Okay, etc. That's halacha. There are like 3 opinions, but that's halacha. Mishnah, aren't we excited to get to the next Mishnah? Hetter Iska. Oh, here I have something, a little chart on the wall. In case of our new Mishnah, Samiches Amud Aleph is as follows. I'm sorry that the chart is not so clear here. Mr. Investor invests money. He gave a person who's looking for a job, let's say chenveni, a person who sits in his store, or a person who has another job, and he says, look, you sit here making small money, I'll make you into a millionaire. Take my $100 worth of whatever, I don't know what, of the new high-tech product, only $100 of those worth. Let's divide 50-50, which means you'll do the hard work, but I invested, and eventually, when we'll make 2,000, the gain, the green one, 1,000 will be mine, and 1,000 will be yours. That you're not allowed to do because it's ribis. Ribis? Why is it ribis? Before we read the Mishnah, let me explain about Peh. If everything goes nice and hunky-dory, and everything is nice and amazing, and really there are gains, that's all very nice. In other words, I invested 100. Who remembers $100? They're swallowed in that $2,000 or more. Yeah, and eventually the investor will get 1,000, and the hard worker will get 1,000, and the rest is history. And both of them are billionaires, and they're on the top of the list in Forbes and Time magazine. They're on the cover of the magazine, richest people. All very nice. What would happen, excuse me, if it fails, as business sometimes tend to fail? What happens if those 50-50, he told him in advance, who? The investor told the worker, he told him, listen, I'm giving you 100, at least 50, at least from my 50 with its potential. What happens if instead of 50, it goes to 40, let's say, or to 0? Let's say you try to sell them and you mamish lose. They become cheaper, or you lose them on the way to the makolet, shlemazel. What would happen if you make it below 50 and there's a loss? Okay, well, excuse me, at least, forget about the other 50, at least my 50, it's all my 100, but at least have the decency, and I'm demanding it, that you'll have to pay me up from what? Your own pocket. Give me the 40 plus 10 from your own little pocket, because I don't have to suffer losses, at least not on my half. Okay, so really that's a loan. Why? Look at that column and view it as the halva. Why is that halva? This is halva and this is pikodon, deposit. Why? This, he says, this, yeah, I want to get back from you at least 50. If somebody says, I'm giving you money and I want to get back, it's either halva or pikodon. In this case, it's halva. Why? Because I didn't give it to you just to look after. I'm giving it to you to make a lot of money. Let's look at this and have a new, fresh look on halva. When I lend someone, no ribis, no stories, very, very simple halva. I lend someone $1 million. Why? Because either he'll make business out of it. From my million, he'll make 100 million. Woo! Maybe one day he'll hire me as a COO if it's not ribis. Yeah, Lamaisa, that's not a problem. I gave it you $1 million, so you'll use them. Make 100 million. Gesundheit. What would be if it's the other scenario and you come to me long face, dog faced, and you say, sorry, Akiva, instead of $1 million, all I can return you now is $750,000. I don't care. So the other quarter, pay for your own pocket. That's alva. That's alva. That's alva. In other words, because half the money here is what? Half the money is a loan, which, by the way, of itself is not a problem so far. That's explaining where the loan is lurking and hiding over here in the Iska. It's an Iska called in the halacha. You have to give me back a minimum of 50? Yes. Potentially, you'll use it for yourself. It's not pikodon. You'll use it to make your own 2,000 into 2 million. That's alva. It's for your own use. You'll use it for yourself. You're not supposed to give it back to me, right? You're supposed to give back to me. However, if you lost, you're supposed to give me what? The 50. And if it's less than 50, you have to give me what? Whatever is missing. That's alva. Why is Mr. Chenvani was working very hard? First day in the job. Woo! Investor. Finally. He is all excited sitting in the makolet or even making phone calls, emails, buy the new high-tech product of whatever that is, the new filter on the smartphone, whatever, the new hit in the market. And why is he working so hard on the entire amount? Why is he also working on the investor's amount? Because he's nice to the investor? Because the investor is a nice guy? No. If he doesn't have any other incentive, because his own half, of course, he wants to make gains. Why is he also working on what? On making profit on the side of the investor that is not his side? Because you can say psychological things, but let's leave all kinds of philosophy alone. Money, lemaise, he is what? He's a borrower. He knows that he has to make profit on all sides, because if he fails, right, if he goes below, he'll have to pay with his own pocket. So Lemaisa, he is now, what is he now? He is a borrower who's working for no other reason for his lender. Please note, the ribis here is not in money. When he gives when they share the billions afterwards, that's not ribis, if not for this problem. Why? My half I took, your half I gave you. It was your half to begin with. But the problem is the work, the leg work, and the work you did all the time. You're not getting a monthly salary by him. Why are you working like a friar, say the friends to the shopkeeper, to the worker, to the black worker? Why are you working like a friar for that investor? Also on his part? No, because I own the investor. Because if I fail, then the investor, who's my nice lender, really, yeah, is not going to be happy. And I want to find grace in the eyes of my lender, because part of the investment is the loan. One easy way out, of course, is, and the Gemara Mishnah will only say it at the end, but I'm preempting it. Lo Yitzir, the investor, is a very nice guy or a very halachic guy. And he says, listen, even if you lose, it's okay. Yeah, even if you lose, yeah, even if you come to me all sad-faced with less than 100 in your pocket, show him the edict, it's okay. That's fine, because then there's no loan. I'm not expecting from your own pocket any compensation. That's fine. I'm not a lender. Once I'm not a lender, the world is mine. Another another solution, and that's the solution, and that's Hetter Iska, by the way. This is the root for what we do all the time. Another solution is to pay him something besides the actual gain. If he gets another, let's say, $10, besides that ganze deal, you also pay him every day or every month or once or something. You do pay him as a worker, you give him some kind of salary, then it's okay. Why? Because now we say, you know why he's working so hard for the guy? Not because he's his lender, because he's his employer. He's wearing now a different hat, employer. Because he's the one who gave him money, either one off, or we're going to see 3 different opinions at least. And therefore, that makes it kosher, because the reason why he's working hard is not only because he has to meet the minimal quota to his malveh, because he's getting a salary. Yeah, he's a chenvani. Why is the guy sitting in the makolet, sits there and sells, or the girl with a cashier? She's not volunteering. Between smartphone and other smartphone message, she also serves you, which is nice of her, right? So therefore, why does she do that? Not because she's balas chesed, because she gets a salary. No investment over there. So too, if you act besides as a cashier, and you do that because you get the salary, even a minimal salary, as we're going to see, that's good enough. That is Iska in a nutshell. Prefer no questions, because we're going to develop it as the Mishnah goes along. Thank you. Let's see how the Mishnah works it out. Ein moshivin. Chenvani lemachtzit sachar. Don't let a person, you Mr. Investor, don't let the, what's his name, the worker sit in the shop as a chenvani, as a shopkeeper for machtzit sachar, and say, go half-half, because of the problem I just told you. Why are you working hard on the half of the balabais, of the investor? Because you borrowed from him for your own thing. The two halves are covering for each other in a non-kosher way. I borrowed, therefore I work on his part hard. I'm working because I'm a lender, because I'm a borrower, and that is ribis. Whether it's d'oraisa or d'rabbanan, another discussion, not for now. That's another case. A chenvani is a guy who sits on the smartphone. A chenvani is a sedentary thing. He sits there and he sells. Who gave him the fruit? The investor. The second guy, likach ben perois, that's another guy who works much harder. You tell him, listen, I'm giving you cash. You have to buy the high-tech products. You have to buy the fruit. You have to buy the phones, and you have to run around buying phones, the best way possible. You do all the running around. You do not just the marketing, but also the purchasing. That's harder work. And still, it's the same agreement. It's the same thing. Why are you working hard? Because you have that debt of the original investment following you, breathing down your neck. So that's ribis, your work you're doing for him now. Ela im ken, what's the solution? Unless you give him an incentive, more than incentive, you give him his sachar, salary, like a worker, as the Gemara is going to say, like the poel botel, like a minimum wage of a worker, which we'll discuss for explanations there. Next case, similar. Let's say I have 4 eggs to invest, 4 eggs which I didn't buy in the makolet, 4 eggs which are fertile potentially, and I want to start a whole new business of organic, let's say chicken, eggs, and all that. It's a chicken and egg question. And now I have 4 eggs, 4 of them, 2 will be mine eventually when they become millions of chicken, and 2 will be yours. I'm the investor, you're the worker. Don't do, and you work with them. You're the farmer. I'm a Tel Avivi guy. I don't know how to deal with chicken yet. And you are what? You're the moshavnik, and you're going to take all 4 eggs, have your hands sit on them, incubate, and hopefully, zera anoshim averochim mazel tov. There'll be a nice chicken coming out eventually. You can't do that half-half business. Why? Because if the guy, the moshavnik, is the one who does all the work, and by the way, feeding them also as expenses, and he feels, why am I working so hard? I work so hard because otherwise the investor, my half, I want to be a billionaire. His half, I don't want him to be a billionaire, but he's my malve. You're working for a malve, bad news, unless what? Yeah, as we'll see the solution, it's just a bit different. The en shamin uglin v'siochel lemechza. Shamin is an important word. Let's say you take a baby egel, a calf, or siach, a baby fowl, yeah, foal, yeah, the baby horse, fowl, yeah, and what? Foal, yeah. And then I'm talking about the babies here, yeah. And then, yeah, he's a baby, zakot and godolia. You start breeding him, eventually it can be, 100 million horse, if it's pure bred, yeah, from pure blood. So then, now, ein shamin, let's say you're the investor, you tell the horse breeder, the guy who has the horse, whatever farm, you tell him, right now that horse is worth, I don't know how much, 5,000 shekels, very little, yeah? Is 5,000 shekels? 5,000 shekels. Anything happens to that horse, it gets damaged, gets something wrong, dies, 5,000 shekels. I'm not willing to go below my 0, which is 5,000. Oh, that's bad news. Why? Because he owes you money. He borrowed kilo 5,000 shekels or 2,500, whatever, and what? And you expect it back. Don't do that because of the same old reason as we said before. However, here the solution is not to pay him like a worker. Says Rashi, why? A person who sits in the shop all day long, or the person who runs around from the wholesaler, he really has a day's work, right? That's his job. A person who breeds 4 eggs or so, whatever, a little bit of eggs in this, it's not an entire day job. He has to feed them once, twice a day. It's just those chicken that belong to you or the one horse of yours. It's not an entire day. He can work in the law firm and still, in the morning, in the evening, take care of the horse. So what you have to give him is amaloi. Give him just for that work. Yeah, not as a day worker. Give him for what he does for those few minutes a day. Make up some kind of symbolic price to give him, and mezoinoi. And also the food that he feeds them. He gives them good fodder. Pay him that too. Aval, that's the solution I told you at the beginning. Mekablin, spot the differences. Mekablin agolin v'syochin lemechza umegadlin oisanat yom shaloshin, which means mekablin is not shamin. Let's say I tell you, listen, this is the horse. I have a tiny little horse. I got it by Yerusha, got it in Matana from a friend. I don't know what to do with it. You breed it. You make him be the most choshev horse, to be the stud horse or whatever, to be or run around with the jockeys, yeah, in the races, millions of pounds, yeah, and we'll split half. That's okay. Why is that okay? Because they did not specify the price, the current price of the horse, which means that even if the horse would die, you are not responsible. Which means you're not a borrower. If you're not a borrower, all roads are kosher legamre lemehadrin. Because then, like any other person would think before reading the Mishnah, you're just an investor. In other words, I'm a nice guy. I'm willing to absorb the loss. And I understand the oiness. I mean, maybe it's to pay like a shoymer, but I'm saying, I'm not like this guy who, whatever happens, or hukubekruka view as a shoyel, and you have to pay me ba'oinsin. I believe you. If you died ba'oines, Sean, what can you do? I'm moichel, I'm a nice guy, parnasim mishamayim. In such a case, no problem, because you don't owe me anything. You can only gain but not lose. So why are you working hard for my half? Because you're a nice guy. I don't care why. You're working for my half, meaning the worker works for the investor. The investor is not a lender. Once the investor doesn't have the ugly lender stamp on his face, Mimela, that is considered to be okay because there is no ribis involved anymore, and there are no questions now. Till we are behind, way behind the schedule today. 1 second. So megadlin oisun achu meshuloshin, until they're meshulash, doesn't mean until they're triangle, until they reached a third of their potential age, growth, size. Until then, you raise them, you breed them, you whatever you want to call it, the horse, and then we split the gains. Why then? I saw a few Rishonim, they basically tell us that that's the accepted agreement. Yeah, you like to always mention it, Ellen. In other words, let's say there was no clear agreement when we're going to part ways, but eventually the investor and the worker, they split the shares and they break the company, right? And therefore, sometimes yes, sometimes no. The accepted thing, unless written, unless known, unless agreed otherwise, is their agreement has to last together. They have to keep the shidduch until the horse or the whatever, the cow, the thing, grew up to its third of potential age, growth, whatever. Now, the chamor, acheteto enes. Donkey, acheteto enes. A donkey, you got a young donkey, same thing exactly. I want you to breed the donkey to be a good, hard-working donkey. That's instead of a tractor, instead of a truck. And now, until the chamor is adult enough to have a burden, to be loaded, until that stage, we are together, and you feed and I pay you something symbolic every time. But the stage when the chamor is old enough to have a burden on it, on he or she, at that point it's accepted, again, unless we decide otherwise, at that point it's accepted to break that partnership. Lefi halacha, unless you don't want to do that way. I don't know why, but the Mishnah is basically, the way I understood from the Rishonim, the Mishnah is telling me what should be expected in halachic terms. Like in many other things, the halacha gives us the financial standard, unless we know of any other standard. The Seder says the Gemara, let's get it going. Tana. Now, how much do I have to? I'm the investor. You want to be the worker? You want to work hard and sell my business of I don't know what kosher sushi. Okay, kosher margin sushi. Yeah, all the women in the neighborhood go crazy for that. All very nice, right? The men suffer through the sushi. So now what? Now at Poel, I pay you as what? I can't just go half-half, right? Because the first amount of money I gave you was a loan. And you're working because you are a borrower, working a chamo, working your body off for that. So I have to give you another salary. Now, I don't have to give you full salary. Why? Because Lamaisa, you are gaining, you're going to have your profit too, right? The only reason I have to pay you, if I was a guy, if my name was Tim McKenzie or Tom O'Reilly, I wouldn't have to give you another salary, right? I would have told you, yeah, I'm nice, I lent you, I invested everything, you're only working, go have half. The only reason we have to give you something symbolic, whether you like the word or not, is what? Because we want to have yet another thing in the corner, another incentive for him to work besides being a borrower. That's what we want. So he doesn't have to get full salary. We don't have to go online and see how much the cashier get or how much does a young, whatever, working guy that's buying and selling businessman, how much he gets percentage. We don't have to go with that. We can go with a smaller amount, which Allah uses many, many times, called Tana Kipoyel Botel. Like a poyel that's lazy, like an idle worker. You have to pay him like an idle worker. Rashi, it's frag the Gemara, Makipel Botel. What do you mean? An idle worker? First of all, he's not idle, he's working. And how much would an idle worker get anyways? I'd give him zero. What does it mean? Omar Abaye, and that appears many times. And Abaye has 4 explanations. The poel botel shel oisu melocha de botal mino, which means, says Abaye as follows. I'm going now with Rashi. Then I'll tell you one more pshat, and I'll leave the other pshatim alone. Poel botel, which means how much would a person pay to leave his current job and have an easier, cushier job and still not lose too much? Okay, so the story is as follows. You want to actually bring to Israel a new kind of medical product, yeah? You want to invest in medical products, okay? You go to that guy who is a very nice doctor in Hadassah, and he makes not a lot of money. He makes 30,000 shekels a month. And you tell him, I saw you working so hard like crazy, running in the ER, and emergency room and the surgery room and theater and all that. How about spending more time with your children? Being a bit calmer, cushy job. I have this new center, this new place, medical products, and you're a doctor. You'll sit there online, not online, and you'll sit there giving advice and also, selling people. Much easier job. You don't have to run around between all the screaming children there. And how much would you take a month? What would the doctor say? Oh, yeah, I always dreamt of, having a calmer lifestyle and this, but I'm working less. So I understand I'll take less, but how much less? From 30,000, I won't go to 10,000. My kids are used to a certain standard of living. Maybe they won't go to Chutzlaritz twice a year, so once a year. So, instead of 30, 20,000. That's a big cut, right? Yeah, for 20,000 a month, I'll sit. That's what you have to pay him. You have to pay him how much, or however much he demands. If the guy originally got 15,000, works as a, I don't know, fancy secretary somewhere, 15,000, how much would he be willing to get a kosher job? 10,000. So you give him 10,000. In other words, regarding, you have to gauge his previous job vis-a-vis what he does now, and that's what you have to pay him according to Rashi. The Rashba says Kepoel Botel means something very different. Let's say the person is a tailor, fashion designer, tailor. That the tailors have high seasons and low seasons. Before the Yomim Tovim, very busy, they take more money. Low season, they take less money. If you're a tailor and now I want you to convert your job, a job change, into my medical products or into my fashion store, and you sit there nicely and have a much easier job, just sipping coffee and this, have an easier job, how much would you take? You take like you take in your low season, not like you take in your high season, which means Poel Batel basically means it's more than symbolic. I actually regret the word. It's according to those Rishonim, means I give you a salary, but out of the range of salaries, I'm giving you the lower one. Okay? That's basically what it means. And that should keep everybody happy. He gets enough money for a cushy job, and I don't pay too much, because really the only reason I have to pay him is to avoid the issue of ribis, right? He's anyhow going to make hopefully 2 million from his half. I pay for paying for my half because why? Because to avoid ribis, for that Poel Batel is good enough. Now comes the Gemara, 5 more minutes. The tzricha. Now the Gemara, if you remember, in the Mishnah we had 2 cases. Either the worker, the one runs around, doesn't run around, he sits sedentary like a chenvani. I provide him with a space. I provide him with a schoira. He has to sit there and serve the customers. That's easier than running around before, right? Or what was the second option? I only give him cash. He has to rent a place. He has to get the produce and all the products from the wholesalers. He has a lot of legwork to do. And both of them get like a Poel Batel. Both of them get, well, it will be exactly the same, but other than relative to their jobs, would get the same percentage of a Poel Batel. The tzricha. The Mishnah had to mention both cases: the easier job of the one sitting like a chenvani with a smartphone, the kosher, hopefully with a tilim or the sefer, or the one with the one who runs around. Both of them, relative to the jobs, they both get Poel Batel. The tzricha. The Mishnah had to mention both cases. Why? If you only mention chenvani, which is the easier job, that's one who just sits in the store. The Israeli Makolet. He chats with everybody for half an hour between purchase and purchase. It's a nice job. Itan chenvani udesagile kepoel batel. For chenvani, it's good enough, worth enough for him to work in that cushy job like a poel batel, which is what? By the way, there's a third pshat. Poel batel is the person with no qualification. If I get a chenvani that has qualifications and went to chenvani school, I pay that chenvani as if he doesn't have qualifications, which is like a chenvani, like a freshman, like a starter. Yeah, it's a salary, but the lower in the range. Yeah. So if it's a chenvani, kapol batel mishum delo nafish tichei, he doesn't have a lot of work, so he gets the relatively minimal amount in the range of salaries. Aval moes likach ben peiros. If I gave him only cash or my credit card, and he has to run around and buy all the produce, the nafish tichei. He works much more. No, don't give him Poel Batel. Give him the high salary. No, we don't have to give him the high salary. Again, if he's a doctor in Shari Tzedek and he has to run around, makes sense. He'll charge a bit more. Mitzido, but we can't give him the entire 30,000. Yeah, I'm not going to give him the higher of the higher just because he's working harder. You're not a doctor now. You're a worker. On the other hand, had the Mishnah only mentioned the one who works hard, the one who runs around, Avamina would have said, I would say that guy has to get like a poel botel, mishum denafish tirche. He has to get a salary, and a small salary, but a salary nevertheless. Soon you'll see what's the contrast. You'll understand because he's working hard. Aval chenbeni delona fish tirche. The chenbeni has it really cushy. Sit there, like these people in the cash. With all the respect, I'm sure the good workers and they're nice and they're amazing people. But lemaisa, it's not such hard work as opposed to the one who has to run around between all the suppliers and all that rice. Ema, I would have thought sagile b'mashu be'alma. Wow, I would have thought, as we have an opinion later on, that for him it's enough to not even get a salary b'chlal. The afilu loy toval imoy ela betzir. We'll see an opinion later on that says, let's say I give you a nice meal in a restaurant, even a very small meal of one gorgeous, one dried fig. In other words, because the whole thing is just symbolic, because you really work there, why? You hope to make profit, yeah? And you also work because I'm your lender. We're trying to get out of the lending business and give you another incentive to make you work hard for me. For that, a nice meal in a restaurant is good enough. I don't need any salary whatsoever. So one would argue and say, because this guy is really not working hard at all, the one who sits in the shop, right? And he sells all the schoira, both him and mine, the investor. Why? He's not doing such hard work. So all you need is something symbolic to get him out of the loan business, a loan mindset, and into another incentive. An incentive is good enough. Give him a nice gift for Hanukkah, for Pesach. Give him some meal, of just some groigros, and that's good enough. Kamash Malan, we don't say that. Kamash Malan, we equalize the salaries, and whether the guy is a guy who sits sedentary or a guy who runs around, in both cases, we said at the end of the day, you give him what? You give him kipol botel. You give him the salary of a poel, but out of different ranges, a minimal salary of a poel that should cover both whether he works harder or he works more cushy. And at the end of the day, that should be enough to get him out of milva mindset and give him another reason to work hard for the investors' half. And that's how Hetter Iska really, really works, as far as I know, although I didn't go into it so much yet. But Metzia Hashem, we'll see much more next week. We'll still have Shiur next week. Metzia Hashem, question time, but we're going offline now. Thank you to all our Torah Anytime viewers, YouTube, and mainly everybody here in Avos Shalom. Welcome back, welcome back. Nice to see you again. Thank you, Atzlocha Rabba, to everybody. Have a very good Shabbos. Oh.